And this story reiterates or is very descriptive of how God walks you through things in life. And as I said, don't get hung up on something that you know is a stumbling block in your life, because it's not up to you. It's up to God. Your response is to give it to God. And for me personally, coming out of a very abusive marriage, my first marriage, and this woman being very abusive towards my boys, and them being so young, example of that is my little guy Samuel came home to me after being with my ex one day, and he arrived home and he had a black eye, he had marks across the side of his face and his neck. And my oldest one, I asked Matt what happened, and he just said to me, Mom went off on him. And he actually physically threw himself between the two. And once he got Sam loose, Sam ran to his bedroom and locked himself in the bedroom until she calmed down. So we're talking about real issues here. So me as a dad, and my nature is to want to protect. Even Cheryl will tell you, if we're driving down the road and there's some guy, it happened here a little while ago, outside when we had the restaurant. There was a guy getting hands-on physical with a young lady. I was out there in a flash, and no, we don't do things that way. It's bullying, and that I just can't stand, and it's a protective nature. So with my own boys, I was extremely protective, too much so. And I was going through this teaching, getting ready to teach with the Abraham sacrificing his own son. God saying, hey, I'm going to point out a place, you take your son Isaac, you go and sacrifice him. And I got this teaching down. I had the Greek, the Hebrew, the this, the that. And what I didn't have in that story was the heart. And this is as clear as day. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I got finished, and I got this one wrapped ready for tomorrow, and I was packing it up, and all of a sudden, I just broke. And it hit me the impact of what God was asking Abraham to do. He was asking Abraham to go and put something of himself on that altar. And the reason I broke was because I knew that I couldn't do that. Well, what's the very first commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And the very first one I can't do. And here I am teaching God's word. How much of a hypocrite. And you can say, oh, that's being brutal on yourself or hard on yourself. Well, for me, and in my life, it's a very black and white kind of existence. So I sat there and I just said to him, I'm sorry, don't ever ask me to do this. There's no ways that I can. And I realize scripturally it's wrong. And I realize where my heart is. And I'm sorry, I just can't do it. And it was weird because next day I went and taught, and it was just nagging me and chewing at me, and it just kind of went away. I just didn't really think about it anymore. Fast forward a couple of years to when I get into this abusive situation and this divorce that I was going through. When I went through this divorce, it got to the point where we had the trial and everything. This was a 3-year time period until we finally got to trial. Okay, we've been into court literally once every 2 months. We've been into court, some months multiple times per month. The judge, to make his point on the end of it, took our court files and he stacked them on the bench. Our file was over 4 foot high. There was 13 volumes. The judge at the end of it said, this is the most contentious divorce I've ever seen. My ex-wife spent $489,000 on attorneys in 3 years. I woke up one morning, my face was swollen and I was in pain. In anxiety, I'd bitten down on my mouth and I'd split 2 of my molars in half, like that, going downwards like this to the root. I'd go into root canals and everything. That's how much this thing was chewing me out. I'm telling you this so you can see how impacting this next bit is. The end of the trial, I've got my wife's attorney, the other attorney from the office, the paralegal, the runners sitting on the bench behind them, this team, right? And there's me, by myself. We get to the end of the trial, and the trial lasted 12 days. I beg your pardon, 8 days. We get to the end of the trial, and the judge says to us, okay, I'm going to give you a written statement of decision. In other words, he's not going to pronounce his decision from the bench. He's going to write it out with all his legal reasonings, and he's going to mail it to each party. Once you get it, you have 2 weeks to contest it. And then you come back to court. The judge will deal with the contesting that he's received, and then he'll make a verbal judgment, and that'll be a final judgment. I get the thing in the mail, and it says there that I have full custody of both my boys, and that visitation is limited and supervised. And I've won. 2 weeks later, I'm driving to court. I'm driving down the road. I know the exact spot on the road I was at. And there's a song that came on the radio by, I think the artist is Pink. And the reason for writing the song is that she was one night, she had a little baby in her arms, and what was laid upon her was God saying to her, hey, your job is to parent the child. My job is to be the child's God. Don't get in the middle. Don't let your parenting get in between what I'm going to do for this child. Don't shield that child so much that I can't be good to the child. Exactly what I was doing. And she, in the song, because I listened to the interview with her afterwards, and she, in the song, says how she's going to kind of let this child go so that God's will be done in this child's life. I got to the courthouse, and I know that I know God spoke to me. I pulled up, and I really was broken and sobbing because I knew what He was calling me to do. But at the same time, that was literally like putting my child on the altar. So I get to court, and the judge, we get into the whole thing, and he says, okay, fine, I'm going to deal with the objections to the statement of decision. And he gets into it, and man, we're going backwards and forwards with this attorney and everything. And he gets to me, and he says, okay, fine, I'm going to rule. My standing, my initial ruling is going to stand. And I said to the judge, may I address the court? He says, yeah. I said to him, Your Honor, I realize what you've ruled in that. I'd like to change the findings to a 50-50 custody arrangement. And the judge actually pulled the stop, and he addressed us off the record. He said, do you realize what you're doing? Yes, I know what I'm doing. And he asked me why. And I said to him, I really believe God's spoken to my heart. And that was the order made. Well, it wasn't too long after that is when my wife decided to, my ex-wife, I should say, sorry, decided to get permission and take the boys to South Africa, and that's when they disappeared. I know for a fact that going through all of this, having two parents, because it would never come to an end. The fighting would never come to an end. I know for a fact Shell and I would never have made it as a married couple. My ex was just too insane about this whole thing. It consumed her. She couldn't let it go. My boys were suffering hugely, having to choose between mom and dad and going backwards and forwards. And at that time, I was really worried about my oldest son and where he was emotionally and what he may do. So I realized from that perspective, it was better that we could go with one or the other. And that gave them peace, and that I didn't realize what it was going to entail. You know, now I'm looking at things, just having no contact, having no knowledge or anything like that. Had you asked me to make that decision all those years ago when I was preparing that study, I couldn't have said yes. There's no ways. No ways. The other thing that this did is, in 2007, that my church had already come to me and said, look, we're going to ordain you for pastorship, to be a minister. And is that something you want? Is that what you'd like to? And I'm ready to go into the ministry. I wasn't ready to go into the ministry. I see that now. when that happened, that kind of just set things off even more and led to the divorce and everything. That wasn't the cause of the divorce, but it was one of the adding factors. And that caused me to step down and therefore not get ordained and everything else. All these years later, I've got somebody now that doesn't stand in opposition to ministry. I've got somebody that stands and pushes and kicks me to move forward in ministry. This whole thing this journey that we're on is held together by Michelle. There's no ways I could sit and teach if I knew that the kids weren't being fed. I wouldn't do it. I'd make sure that the kids are being fed first. And just there's so much that goes into this whole thing that a lot of us aren't even aware of. If there's any volunteers that want to help, feel free. But that's her job. That's what she does. And I can be, she can be running around crazily doing stuff like today. She's sick. She's running a fever. And I said, Shell, can I help? No, you need to study. That's what she's like. That would never have come about if I had my boys with me now, because it would still be all of this. And that act of obedience, laying down, leads to so many other things that you can look back in hindsight. And it's weird because it hurts me. Like this weekend, in hindsight, you see things for what they are, and it's God that prepares you. And I started off with this cross on the floor. What this pastor was saying, and he challenged the young men there and everybody with, was whatever it is that's getting between you and your walk with God, write it down on this piece of paper. And once they'd written it down, then they had to come forward, and at the cross was a bowl of nails and a hammer. And they would take that and hammer it into the cross. And then afterwards, he was going to be taking all of that off that cross, burning it. This is a symbolic thing of it's gone. Okay? And then he had another teaching following on from that. It was very visual. And I sat back in the back of the church and I watched all these guys going down and doing this and everything. And that part of it was very emotional. But what really, really struck me was that sound of those nails being pounded into the cross. And it was ringing in my ears, and I could only imagine what that must have sounded like to God. And the part that really kind of got to me was the first time that those nails were driven in. That must have been bad enough. And that first time that the nails were driven in, all those things that were now getting re-nailed to that cross had already been taken care of. Yet, we continued to do them. We continued to go back time and time again in our own walks and nail that cross again, pound those nails. We fall into the same things over and over and over again. And the power that is in that cross is there for each and every one of us today. The thing is the application of that. When you face the temptation, the application of that is what we miss. It's a very simple verse. Thy will be done, not my will be done. And when the temptation hits, the bad mood, the anger, the drugs, whatever the temptation is, okay, when that hits, there's a split second right there that you have to make a choice. And you are given that choice. You can choose the way of the cross, or you can choose my will be done. At that split second, at that juncture in that road, and that road is not a gentle one. This is a T-junction that you hit. When you hit that T-junction, and you're going to go the way of the cross or the way of my will be done, that T-junction, at that point, when you recognize the sin, you recognize the temptation, you recognize the bad mood rising up, whatever it is, at that point, you get to say, no. Simple. No. It sounds so simple right now. But at that point as well, you get to claim what was done on that cross. And that claim there is, Lord, I know you've beaten this thing. I know that I don't have to do this anymore. Temptation is attempting. You don't have to do it. Kyle and I were at this thing this whole weekend. And one of the things that they do is they fatten you. I mean, they feed you so much. When I went on my walk, I said to them, this is some kind of cult. You guys are fattening me up so much, I'm sure you're going to sacrifice me come Sunday. I mean, there's food like you cannot believe. This keto diet, no sugar, no carbohydrates. Breakfast one morning, there were 6 trays, big baker's trays like this, of freshly baked pastries. Honestly, I could sit down and nail at least 2 or 3 of those trays on my own and forget the eggs and everything else. But every time he turned around, there was temptation. And then the guy that I was working with, he's a good friend of mine, he took it upon himself he'd come and sit down next to me during the lectures, and he'd bring himself a plate, because all the participants in front, we were sitting at a table at the back with the pastoral team. And he'd sit there with his plate, and he'd pick up one of these pastries. And he'd pick it up eye height, and he'd kind of break it open. And he'd be looking at it and say, man, whispering, look how moist this is. And it would crumble. And I'd open up my Bible, and in it I'd find pieces of candy. I'd find cookies wrapped up. I'd find sticks of celery wrapped in Caesar, the pizza place. The napkin from Caesar's, a piece of celery wrapped in a pizza place napkin. I'm dying. That's temptation right there. You have a choice. For me, the choice was the hard work that I put in over these last couple of weeks. I could undo that right there and then. Kyle kept me on the straight and narrow because I'd watch him. And I mean, one of the meals there was there was pasta. Oh man, pastas and breads and all sorts of things, and then there's this bowl of salad. And I said to Carl said to me, man, there's nothing for us to eat. I said, well, I'm just going to hit the salads. Do that. And he said, I don't like salads. I'm just not going to have anything. And look, what's wrong with this? How does he do it? But you've got a choice. And I mean, so much in your life has been done already in your Christian walk. Look at it that way. Look at all the stuff you were caught up in. Look at the stuff that you were enslaved to. You didn't have a choice. Me with my anger, I didn't have a choice with that. Something happened, boy, I popped, and that was it. Now I have a choice. I mean, so often now, something will happen, and Shell will be like, man, I'm proud of you. You know, where's Rory kind of thing. I don't have to do it anymore. And that's the same with any sin and all sin, you don't have to do it anymore. When you get to that T-junction, it's, you recognize it, no, I don't have to do it anymore. And at that point, you can say, Lord, I recognize the power and what you've done on the cross already. I choose not to. And you can walk the other way. Now the temptation is lost. It's good because you've already made a choice. But sit there like Pharaoh. When Pharaoh had that plague of frogs, and Moses came to him and said to him, okay, God says I can take this away from you. And when do you want them gone? Pharaoh responded, tomorrow. I mean, it blows my mind. You've got frogs in your bed, you've got frogs all over the place and everything. When do you want them gone? Tomorrow. That's exactly us with our sin. When do you want that gone? Tomorrow. I just want to click onto the internet one more time. I just want to do this one more time. It's always tomorrow, and tomorrow never, ever comes. And that hammer with that ringing sound in my ears, that really spoke to me. So, that was the old rugged cross. Now maybe we can get into a Bible study. Man, I'm tired. Anyway, so we were busy in Genesis, and we're tracking just a walk of all these early men through the Bible. And we've been dealing with Jacob, and he'd gone down and stayed with Uncle Laban. And in his stay with Laban, remember Laban was not a believer. And Jacob was down where Laban was, which was a pagan area. He didn't have to stick to what mom and dad showed him. He was out of sight. He could have lived as the rest of the pagans. He could have adopted all their customs, their cultures, and everything else. And that right there is what integrity is. That will give you what your relationship is. If you call yourself a Christian and you want to see how much of a Christian you are, the verse that we're going to take out of is Genesis chapter 30. That'll be the verse 27. So Genesis 30, 27. We're going to bounce around in Scripture quite a bit. But if you want to really take a good look at yourself and put a dial or get an idea of how strong your walk is, look at your walk when nobody else is looking. What do you do when nobody else is looking? When you're at home alone, nobody else is looking. Where are you going to on your cell phone? Where do you spend your money? Those are all things by which you can gauge your walk. Yeah, this verse here, verse 27, and Laban said to Jacob, please stay if I find favor in your eyes. Here's the important bit. For or because I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. Jacob's presence, Jacob's lifestyle, was blessing this non-believer. This is kind of where we were this morning with regards to that verse where Jesus talks to us and calls us for ministry and says, let your light, your walk. Remember, Jesus said, I am. He is the light. Okay, now he's saying your light. Let your light so shine before all men that they will see that and they'll glorify your Father in heaven. They will want that light. The analogy that I heard was, if you go back to Genesis, God made the sun, S-U-N, to rule the day, and then he made the lesser light, the moon, to rule the night. The moon doesn't have any light, yet it's a source of light at night time. Here's the interesting thing. You got the sun, or the S-O-N, the Son of God, being pictured as the sun. That's the light, right? Us, we're a bunch of moonies. We're over here. The light that the moon, that we look up and we see the moon shining brightly, is simply reflecting the sunlight coming down and hitting the moon. That's what we see, okay? When you've got a full moon, what's happening is the earth, which is in between the sun and the moon, when it's full moon, what is happening is the moon is not, the earth is not in the path, in the line of the sun and the moon. In other words, the whole moon can be illuminated because the earth is not here. The earth, in biblical terms, or the world, is always a picture of sin. Now, the degree to which the earth sits between the sun and the moon determines how much light comes from that. Determines how much of a reflection of the sun you will see off that moon. So the more you allow the earth to get in between the Son of God and you, determines how much your light will shine. The amount of sin that you allow to get in between you and God is going to diminish your light. And every single month, go outside and look. You'll have a full moon in a couple of days. Sometimes it's really cool. You'll have one of those super moons, all the rest of it. And I wish we could all be super moonies at one stage of the year, but at the end of that cycle, man, there's just this. You've got to really, really look carefully, and you'll see that slither kind of thing sitting in the sky. It's not even a crescent, it's just a slither. Watch that slither, and you'll see that during the night, at some point, it disappears. That's our walk. That's what that speaks of. So here, Laban, the non-believer, is pointing out to Jacob, hey, your presence here, through your presence, your walk, your personal walk, I've been ministered to and I've been blessed by God. Jump over to John chapter 15. John chapter 15, verse 16. Now notice that wasn't Pastor Jacob that we were talking about, okay? He's still tricky dude and sinful Jacob and everything else, just as we've discussed in our Genesis studies. It wasn't Saint Jacob. Just Jacob, just the deceitful one, okay? Verse 16, this is Jesus speaking. He said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you." You didn't go and choose to follow Jesus. He came and fetched you. He's the one that dragged you out of the gutter. Next little bit, the and. I've got the and circled and highlighted because it's important. And appointed, or that word appointed. Anybody got a King James version for appointed? It's actually ordained.
Well, I have in quotes besides that, it says I planted. Mine says appointed, but it says also planted.
Okay. Ordained. That's the true rendering of that. Okay. So God chose you and ordained you. A lot of men will pay a lot of money to go to seminary. But you come out with a degree, that's what you come out with. Until such time as you've walked the walk and actually been ordained by God, you still don't have anything. So here God is telling you, I chose you and I ordained you. There's nothing in here about I chose you pastors or you elders or you deacons. It says you personally, okay? Put your name in there. Ordained you that you should go and bear fruit. So your fruit is making disciples. And that your fruit should remain. These are now disciples that aren't going to be disciples 1 week and not the next. This is talking about a life-changing experience in other people's lives. So your life should cause another person to want to change their life to such a point that their life is going to change and impact the next person. Now you're ordained. So you're welcome to look at the person next to you and call them bishop, pastor, saint, whatever it is. Next time you sign your name, you can sign it as that. There you go. Saint Kyle. Okay? So, jump over to Jeremiah. Book of Jeremiah. Just right of the center of the Bible. Okay? Book of Jeremiah, chapter 1. God's speaking again, and he's talking to Jeremiah. Now, I realize Jeremiah is a prophet, okay? But follow the flow of this verse. So God's speaking to Jeremiah. He says to Jeremiah in verse 5, he says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." So this is way before God put Jeremiah together. Before you were born, I sanctified you. So before he was even born, God had already cleaned him up, if you will. That's sanctification. The sanctification process is once you become a Christian, once you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, excuse me, he will then take out those stumbling blocks that we spoke about earlier that are in your walk between you and God. It's his job. It's not your job. It's not the pastor's job. It's his job. He will clean you up. Then it says, I ordained you as a prophet to the nations. So here God creates this guy. And when he builds him with a specific purpose in mind. If you're going to build yourself a motorbike for a specific purpose, in other words, I want to take that motorbike and I want to ride cross country from here to California. I'm not going to put on, those big old Harley ape hanger handlebars. Put on a pair of motocross handlebars. I'm not going to put on, big old fat cruising tire. I'm going to put on a tire with those big claws on it and everything. The same tire that you cannot put on the road because the rubber's too soft and it'll rip apart. But on the dirt, that's what gives you traction. That bike is specifically built for a purpose. So too are you specifically built for a purpose. Because God, this is saying to Jeremiah, you have a purpose in life. So there's the guy in the Old Testament, and there's a king, Eglon, who conquers Israel at that point. And Israel is paying tribute to this king. The Bible says he's a very fat man. There's a guy that's created there. God had a purpose for him, and God creates him. Lets us know that this guy's right hand was withered. So this guy is born with a withered right hand. To everybody, oh man, he's deformed, shame. But God created him because he had a purpose for him. Later on in the story, as years go by, this guy goes to go and pay tribute to this King Eglon. And when they go into the palace to Eglon, the soldiers, the guards, they search them. Now, if you've got a sword, you would take the sword and you put it, or a large knife, you take it and you put it on your right-hand side. Your left-hand side. Because you take your right hand, you reach over, you grab it, and you pull it out. Or you drop it down the back here. You don't put it on your left-hand side if you're going to be hiding it away. Because you can't get this thing out. Okay? So when you walk in and they're going to search you, they would pat your right side down. They'd pat you down here. That's where you're going to draw from. But here's a man who's got a withered right hand. So what hand does he use? Left hand. Where's the sword going to be? Right hand side. He walks in and he goes through the guards. They don't pick up anything. He then, as the Bible tells us, ended up stabbing Eglon and killing him. He was created for a specific purpose. God used that specific man to liberate Jerusalem at that time, or the Jews at that time, I beg your pardon. What we view as a deformity, a handicap, no. My addiction to something is not without purpose. My life pre-God, having fallen in different areas, is not without purpose, because it's those very things, like I told you earlier, that little boy the young man who was battling to express what he had done wrong, I could sit with him and tell him, hey, here's my life story, and now all of a sudden he can relate to me because I've walked the walk, I've done it, not without purpose. That's my testimony, and it can be used for God's glory. It's not a case of, oh, check on me, I was the world's greatest drug addict, and I did. No, that's not what it's about. It's, man, I've walked a shameful walk, just like you are feeling shame. And because I've done all of this, I can't sit here and judge you or point fingers at you.
Makes us less judgmental.
Most definitely. So here, God is telling you that He formed you for a purpose, right? Jump over to Ephesians chapter 2. So now you can say, okay, fair enough. Well, we just read in Jeremiah that Jeremiah is a prophet. And indeed, Jeremiah was a prophet. Prophets were used extensively in those days. Now, the term prophet, today you'll find people in the church circles walking around and say, oh, I'm a prophet. You don't want to grab that title too loosely and too quickly. The Bible's very, very specific, and it says there, if a prophet prophesies something and it doesn't come to pass, take him to the gate and stone him to death. This is a false prophet. So if you want to throw that title around, I'm a prophet, stones are going to come your way. The second thing is that in this time period that we had these prophets, the life of a prophet wasn't a glorious thing. These prophets were abused, stoned, and all sorts of things. God also called these prophets to a very, very visual ministry. He had one of the prophets go and lie down in the street for, I believe it was a year. I think it was a year. It was X amount of days, but it was close to a year. And then at one point he says to him, okay, take human dung, put it together, and cook on it. He's lying in the street, and he's lying there naked. God has him lie there so that people walking by every day are seeing this. They know he's a prophet, and they're like, what's coming now? It wasn't this, oh, check me, I'm the prophet. There was another prophet where God said, okay, you wear your underwear for this amount of days. And it was a lot of days. Then you take that underwear off and you go down to the river and you put it down and you put a big old rock on top of it and you leave it there for that many days. Then you take it and you put it on And now you're going to go and give the message to the people. You got this underwear that's obviously stinks like anything, full of holes. It's just tattered in that. It's a visual. So as he's giving this message to these people, and he's saying to them, hey, you guys are going to fall into desperate times. They're kind of looking at his holy underwear and they're like, whoa, if that's what we're going to look like, yeah, I can see desperate times coming. And that's what he prophesied came to pass. Do you get prophets today? I believe God can use anybody to prophesy. I believe God can use anybody to bring about acts of healing, word of knowledge. There was prophetic statements given this weekend that I know that they were prophetic statements because I watched one person say something in prayer to a kid, not knowing the situation, and I watched another person, not knowing what has been said, pray the exact same prayer. And I mean, they lined up perfectly. That's not natural. So these things still take place in that. So we say, okay, but that last scripture that's okay for Jeremiah. He was a prophet. Well, in this Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, it says there, for we are his workmanship, just as we said, God created us for a purpose. Okay, he created us, created in Christ Jesus for good works. This is referring to us. This is not referring to the prophets, okay? This is referring to you and me. Same thing. There are good works. There's a purpose that God's created us for, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And that's the ministry given to us by Jesus, and that is to make disciples. That's your ordination right there. You're ordained. Every single one of us, if you really think about it, every single one of us has somebody else looking at us, looking up to us. I had this one youngster come to me and he said, man, I just don't know what to do. I've got an anger problem and I just hate my brothers. And they would just come and bug me and da. And then in the next breath, he was talking about his relationship with his dad. His dad had gotten remarried and the lady that he married had children. And he said, I wish I could just spend some time alone with my dad so that I can build and have more of a relationship with him. And he's just talking that. And eventually I said to him, you obviously love your dad a lot. And you want to be like your dad. Yeah, he's this and he's that. And the kid was obviously looked up to his dad. And I said to him, the next time that your brothers irritate you, here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that the thing that they love, what do they love? Well, my one brother collects all these little things. I said, perfect. The next time that your brother's irritating the mess out of you, say to your brother, hey, let's go and look at your collection and you show me this about your collection. And he kind of looked at me like, man, I just want to slap this kid and get him away from me. Why would I now invite that? I said to him, you don't think that what you are craving from your dad, he's not craving from you? And this kid was like, what do you mean? The little guy's looking up to you, and that's what he's craving. Every single one of us have got somebody that has got their eyes on you. They're watching you walk, just like Laban was watching Jacob. And that is your ministry. You may not have a ministry of whatever people, 50 people, 1,000 people, whatever it is. You may have that ministry of one. But let me remind you something. Jesus himself turned around and said that when one goes missing, he leaves the 99, he goes after the one. It's a ministry of one. It's one at a time. If you look at Jesus' ministry, how many disciples did he have? 12. There were times when there were thousands of people following him, but he poured his effort into 12. That's it. Over a 3-year period. And if Jesus could only handle 12 in 3 years, what makes you think that you can handle, a ministry of 1,000 people? No, it's that one. That's your ministry. And that one that you're ministering to is not about, okay, let's sit down and have Bible study together. It's got nothing to do with it. Somebody asked somebody in town here. And I said, oh, well, what does Rory preach on? And the guy turned around and said, Rory doesn't preach. What he does is he teaches you the Bible. And that's what I believe the calling of a pastor is, in feeding the sheep. And that is to teach them what this says and then allow God to speak to them through their word. If I'm standing here and I'm saying, this is what you got to do and this is what you're not got to do, and your perspective is going to be, well, if Rory's doing and saying and telling us what to do and what not to do, that must be Rory. That would be your perspective. And if Rory's got it all wrapped up perfect, and I'm struggling with these things and I'm failing, why bother? I'll push you away eventually through my judgmentalness and perfectionism. I said to Kyle whilst we were on the walk, I said to him, I'm just going to give the talk that I gave out there, because Shell had also asked me if I would. And then I woke up, I went to bed last night and I was kind of about it, and I woke up this morning and I was definitely not going to do the same thing. And this is what was laid on my heart. And it's funny how the Acts tied in perfectly with this. But one of the things that Kyle had asked me is, are you going to do the same thing and are you going to tell that story? And I opened with the story, and it was a story about me as a lifeguard. And you'll see the point of this now. I was about 24 at the time. I had come back from the military. I'd been very successful in the military. I was on the beach as a lifeguard, limited amount of positions on the beach as a lifeguard, so it's a position that's, he's a lifeguard. And I'd also had my sports going, and I was doing well in my sports and that, and I was in the newspapers and all of that. So I thought I was God's gift kind of thing. And when you work on the beach, the first thing you do when you get down there in the morning is you come and you set up your equipment. So you've got the big old lifeguard stand or that platform that the lifeguard sits on and he kind of watches the water. Well, in front of it, on the one side, on the other side, you drive a pole into the ground, you tie a rope from there back to the platform. It kind of makes a corridor, and you put all your equipment into that corridor, so that when there's an emergency, you can run off, just grab your stuff straight into the water. And as I said to the boys, all professional lifeguards, they're highly trained in that. And after you set up your equipment, you do what you train for, and that there's one guy that sits on the tower and he watches we take turns. The rest of the lifeguards, the highly trained ones, they walk around the beach and they look for a hot girl to sit and chat up, and that's what I was doing. So I was back on the beach here, and I was chatting up a girl. And the next minute I hear this lifeguard blow that whistle, and he's telling me that there's an emergency. And I look up, and the lifeguard on the tower, he's got his flag up, and they signal flags. And he's got a flag up in the air and one out to the right. And that tells me immediately there's a problem, and it's further out from where he's at, and it's to his right. So I jump up. My motivation was to get the date. I was faster than the other guys on that beach. And I thought to myself, man, I get to that guy first and save him. Man, it's impressive. I'll get the girl. I took off running. I got to that first rope. I hurdled that first rope. And as I was going over, we did hundreds of rescues a year. So it just becomes second nature. My cap came off, my glasses came off. I grabbed the rescue can. I kind of looked over my shoulder. Now, instead of running down that aisle, that corridor to the water's edge, this guy was showing me it was to his right. So I was just going to cut right across. The second rope, they're about 3 foot high. That's about so high. I met that rope at full sprint. I didn't jump that one. I forgot about that one. I was looking back at the lifeguard on the tower when I met that rope. I did a full somersault and I landed on my back in the sand, like that. And I jumped up and I took off into the water. And I swam like you can't believe. I got right out to the back line. In South Africa, we got big surf. It's not this Mickey Mouse stuff here, because our continental shelf is closer to the shore. So we get big waves coming in. I get out to that back line and I pop my head up and I look back, and the guy, the lifeguard on the tower, he's got both flags up. He's telling me to come back in. So I thought, I swam past the guy. which is not difficult to do because of the size of the surf. I'm swimming in, and I keep on looking up, and he keeps on signaling me to come in. And I'm coming in. I'm about this deep in the water now. I'm standing in the water looking around, and he's still showing me come in, and I look up. There was an elderly guy that had a heart attack on the beach. The other lifeguards attending to him. I ran right past him and into the water. Talk about humiliation. The point of that story was to show the guys that I am no less of an idiot than any one of them. And that's all of us. You know, it's amazing how often God has got to humble you. And that's what we're talking about in the first lesson with Paul. So the qualification, the first qualification that he gives for a person in the place of ministry is humility. And those that God loves and appoints for service, he will humble. Brings everybody down to the same level. So, the person that you're ministering to, be it your child, be it your husband, be it your wife, that first point of reference there is humility. And for each and every one of us that have come to Christ and have a knowledge of Christ and have a relationship with Christ, Paul points out to us, and he says to us that you came to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ through faith. But that faith was a gift from God, lest no man should boast. So the fact that you are saved was purely by God's grace. You've got nothing to boast in it. So the person that you are ministering to, saying, hey, you should come to church, not like me. It's just, you should come to church. Come with me. It's an invite. Or rather, even better still, watch as I go to church. One of the guys that was there this weekend, he'd gone through a divorce as well, and the child was with the mom, and it was a bad situation. And the child now resides with dad, and this kid was giving his testimony. He was just saying, this is what I've walked through, but my life has changed so much. I'm really proud of my dad because my dad's life has changed so much. And in the morning now, I get up every single morning at 5 o'clock. I go sit at the table, and me and my dad, we go through. We read one paragraph or one chapter in the Old Testament, one out of Psalms, one proverb, and one chapter out of the New Testament. His dad was there as well, and I spoke to him about this. And his dad turned around and said to me, I went to his dad, I said, man, that's pretty amazing. And it's amazing how your son's life has changed because of that. And he said to me, I don't really know what else to do. He said, I'm not a scholar. I haven't studied the Bible. I'm new in my faith. He's only really and truly been walking with God hardcore now for two and a half years. This guy now goes to prison ministries and all sorts of things, okay? And he said to me, I'm not a scholar, so that's what I do because I heard that was a way to do it. And he said, I don't have the right to tell my son because my son knows exactly who I was. But this is what I do. And it's amazing because he said, some mornings I get up and I just don't want to do it. And I look outside and there's my son sitting at the table. And I get up and I go and do it. It's got nothing to do with your knowledge, what you say, or anything like that. You are ordained, you are called. And the little bit that you have, that's what you expected to give. That's all. You might think that's all, but that little all can change a person's life totally and radically. Think about that. And again, just think about that sound with the nails and where you're at in your walk. Father God,